Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Grace Monnery, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's session on using social media to raise awareness and increase donations. Roughly 93% of internet users are on social media, accounting for more than 4.7 billion people worldwide. Now, that's a huge audience for charities to reach and an ever-increasing pool of potential donors. So when used properly, socials can help charities find and reach new demographics, boost awareness, build lasting relationships, and ultimately increase donations. Soon, I'll be joined by my colleague, James Shamsi, our Growth and Engagement Marketing Manager, who will walk you through how to do just this. He'll share tactics for growing your following, advice on how you can use social media collabs, and tips on generating new content ideas. But before that, I just wanted to signpost a few useful features of this webinar. Closed captions are available for anyone who may require them. To access these, just click on the CC closed caption button on the menu bar at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to use the chat box throughout today's session to say hello to each other, share your experiences and challenges using social media for your charity, as well as any tips or advice you may have. It's a really lovely way for us to be able to learn from each other. If you have any questions for James, please pop these in the Q&A section and we'll answer these at the end of his presentation. You can also upvote any questions that you'd like to see answered. And finally, today's session is being recorded, so we'll send this to you along with the slides and any additional resources mentioned today in the next few days. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. Without further ado, I'll pass you over to James.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace. Hey, guys. So to kick off, we're going to go through the agenda first because there's quite a bit that we're going to be covering today, and it'll give you a good sense of what's to come as well. So to start, we're going to do some intros. I'll give you some background on me, kind of what I've been doing as well. And then it will also be good if you guys can introduce yourselves as well. You can do that in the chat right now. Just while I go through the agenda, it'll be good if you can do that. And for that, you can really just say your name, what you do, and what charity you help with. And just while you're doing that at the moment, I'll basically just run through the agenda. So in the start, it'll just be intros, and then we'll jump into TikTok strategy. And when we do that, we're going to cover things like where to start when you're starting out, what's unique about TikTok, and how you can kind of like use those advantages and unique things about TikTok to kind of help you get more awareness and drive some of that awareness to actually, help you with your fundraising campaigns. We'll cover some things about TikTok SEO and how to hop on trends and use trends as well to drive more awareness. And then after that, we'll go into tips for how you can grow your following across different socials and a few different tips that you can use for your different socials to basically grow and then turn that traffic into new donors and people to help you spread your word about what your cause is. After that, we'll go into some common mistakes to avoid on social media. And then we'll go into how you can start using social media to set up different collabs, whether they're things like partnered giveaways or working with other brands or charities to help you get new traffic and new awareness. And then towards the end, we'll finish off with some tips for what to do when you're unsure about what to post. And in that section, we'll also touch on some things like how you can start using AI as well to help you do things like come up with more creative ideas when you might have like writer's block and you're not really too sure about what you can do to kind of like change things up and test out different things. And then towards the end as well, we'll go over some topics that we're going to cover in the future, and we'll have some room for a Q&A session as well. So yeah, you can always feel free to put your questions in the chat as well. But yeah, we'll be coming over to one of those questions towards the end. And so to kick things off, we'll start with some introductions, and I'll try and get through this as quickly as possible so we can get to the good stuff. And yeah, just while I'm doing this, make sure as well you have that chance to introduce yourself in the chat. But yeah, some quick stuff on me. So I studied business at King's. I graduated and then moved to LA to work with some different startups and influencers. I ended up specializing in viral marketing. I did some PR stunts for a few different brands and some personal ones for fun as well. My biggest one that I did for just really for myself was one called Card Block, where it was this thing which basically helped you hide any Kardashian related content from your browser experience when you're on your phone or on your laptop. And the idea was that it can basically replace Kardashian content with more important content, like things that aren't getting covered enough in the media. And yeah, one of my bigger client ones was with a sketch that I created for Sam and Colby, which are two influencers. And on that, we got 150 million views on just one of the posts alone, and that was just on one Facebook post. And then basically around that time, I started managing and growing a few different influencers and different niches. Ended up being mostly in comedy, gaming, and fitness. And then I got a little bit sick of influencers, so I joined the startup world and ended up joining a startup in Santa Monica called Narbox, where I was VP of marketing. And it started out where it was literally just 8 of us working in a garage. And then we did two Kickstarters, and we raised over $1 million with both of those. After that, I launched a marketing and PR agency with a friend, and that was called Social IQ. We worked with really just a bunch of different types of clients where we created and executed social media growth strategies. We did things like creating landing pages, marketing funnels, handling influencer marketing spend, stuff like that. And those clients were anywhere from, we had a lot of like UK and US record labels, worked with many e-commerce brands and businesses that were looking for basically cheap, creative ways to drive social media growth, and then to convert that into sales. And we also had a big PR side as well. And then the pandemic hit, and a lot of our clients ended up pulling spends for pretty much most of those services, and almost all of them for the PR side ended up pulling their cash. So we had to pivot, and we did that by leaning into our previous influencer management experience. And here we basically managed influencers and provided 360 services where we did things like grow them on all sorts of socials. That was including things like Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok. And for many of them, we built 7-figure businesses for quite a few different clients. But I ended up walking away from that and stepping away from the agency about a year ago, as it just really wasn't as fitting as I wanted it to be. And managing influencers, it's just not fun. And yeah, I decided I wanted to see what would happen basically if I use marketing only for doing good and to help society. And so now I'm at Charity Digital, helping awesome people like you to, hopefully help you do more work, more better work, and impact more people. And so that makes me very happy. And I also recently started looking after a little girl called Susie. This is Susie. So Susie's going to be joining us throughout the webinar to help us go through some topics. When she does appear, it will be in AI art form as a preview of some of the AI tips to come that we'll go over more towards the end of the presentation. I just figured it will be a nice way to kind of incorporate her throughout the presentation and exemplify the power of AI as well throughout the presentation too. So now we can get into it. First, we'll go over TikTok strategy, and we're going to cover the basics first. That's going to include what's unique about TikTok, how to use those unique points to your advantage, and then TikTok SEO and trends. And so first thing I wanted to do was, we're going to use a key term pretty often, and that's going to be the word algorithm. So I just wanted to define what it means in this context, because I know it gets brought up a lot. So yeah, after we define it, Susie's going to kind of help explain and exemplify it a little bit as well. So just to quickly define it, an algorithm is a set of rules in this context, it's a set of rules that decides which content to display to users based on past behavior and preferences. And its purpose is to keep users engaged by showing them relevant and engaging content. And to do this, it takes into account various factors to determine the order and frequency of the post shown. So, for example, on the top right here, you can hopefully see Susie's on her phone, and she's watching TikTok videos about Pokemon. So if you're sat there in bed watching Pokemon videos all day, the algorithm basically wants to make sure Susie has the best user experience possible. And so it will notice that she loves these Pokemon videos, and it will basically start feeding her more Pokemon videos, as well as topics and content pieces related to Pokemon. So that might be maybe every now and then it trials giving that user like different anime content pieces and stuff like that. So that's really important to know kind of like how the algorithm works and what its objectives are, so that when we do come to our content strategy, we can basically create content with this in mind to maximize our odds of getting more reach, meaning more eyeballs on these different platforms like TikTok, so that we can then have greater odds of converting those people into actual donations as part of our fundraising campaigns. And in terms of how the algorithm does this, we won't go into too much detail about it, but I just want to give you guys a good idea going into it. And it does it in a few different ways. It will do things like it will basically look at the different post statistics on a video to determine whether or not that video is worth showing to Susie compared to another video. And it will do that by looking at things like metrics like what's the ratio of the amount of views that video got compared to the likes, comments, and shares. Then it'll compare it to another video, and it'll say, all right, well, Susie's more likely to enjoy this other video because this other video historically did better based on these different metrics. So basically the algorithm was always going to want to look for quantifiable ways to justify showing certain videos over another to different users, all in an attempt to make sure it's giving users the best user experience possible. And that's also why things like engagement groups exist. You may have heard of them. They're basically groups of people online, and it can be influencers, creators, other charities, etc., where they basically get together to support each other by leaving likes, comments, and sharing each other's posts. And that's why they do it, to basically improve the ranking in the algorithm so that they can use the algorithm to help reach more people and, hopefully go viral and get featured on the Explore page and the For You page. So now that we got the kind of basics out of the way, we can go into why TikTok is so unique and how you can use those unique advantages. So TikTok's unique in some really big ways. The biggest way that it's unique is that on TikTok, every single content piece gets free test reach unless it's private. So what does that mean? Well, if you're on Twitter and you have no following and you tweet, no one's going to see it. There's not much you can do about it. There's a few things, but really, if you're tweeting and you've got 0 followers, no one's going to see it. Same thing with Facebook. You've got a Facebook page or a Facebook group and you post, no one's going to really see it. Now, with Instagram, it's a little bit different. If you post reels, then you stand some chance of getting some free eyeballs and, eyeballs that aren't already following you and aren't really engaged with you. But really with Instagram, it's about the same as well. You're not really going to get too much new reach unless you're using the reels. With YouTube, you can get some free test reach via shorts, basically YouTube's way of competing with TikTok, as they've come out with this thing called YouTube Shorts. And if you have the YouTube app on your phone, you'll be able to see there's a new section where it will say Shorts. So YouTube is able to give some like fresh eyeballs, but nowhere near as much as TikTok. And long term, it can give you some fresh views as well. But again, it's if you do things like you have a really well SEO'd bit of YouTube content, and if you don't know what SEO means, we'll cover it in a bit. But by and large, no platforms come anywhere near as close as TikTok to being able to give you free new exposure. So that's a really important thing when it comes to TikTok. And so if you're starting out and you don't have a following, I'd really recommend you do it with TikTok, because all your content is going to get instant test reach, no matter how small your following is. And yeah, another big thing that's unique to TikTok is that sounds, challenges, and hashtags can genuinely drive traffic. So, you can hop onto content and sounds trends to reach new people. And that's something that other platforms really don't have. IG Reels is trying a little bit, but to be honest, if you're on Instagram and you're using a bunch of hashtags and sounds and stuff like that, you might hit a few new people, but really what you're going to do is you're just going to get a lot of spam bot accounts, commenting and stuff like that, because basically these people will target certain hashtags and stuff. So yeah, TikTok is really good at actually genuinely giving you new reach if you use keyword tagging correctly and you hop onto trends and sounds. And we're going to have a whole section in a bit covering how you can actually do that. So don't worry if you don't really fully know what that means just yet. Another big thing that's unique to TikTok is that unlike other platforms, previously uploaded content is not ranked lower in the algorithm. So when it comes to, for example, Instagram and YouTube, the algorithms will always favor, well, not always, because the algorithms always change, but for now, the algorithms favor original content. And so, for example, back in the day, like a few years ago, Facebook was really penalizing accounts that were re-uploading content. But with TikTok, it's not the case at all. And this also comes as a result of its duet feature, where people can duet each other. And what that means practically for you is that it means that you can do things like test things with a lot more ease, and you can test things with different accounts. You don't need to worry about posting a video and then you can't post it on maybe another side account where you're testing out different pieces of content. In this case, with TikTok, you actually can do that because you're not going to get penalized for it. And this also means that it opens up a whole new form of content types as well. So, for example, you can do things like reaction videos to other bits of content. You can have a reposting strategy where you're reposting, crediting other accounts and seeing what works for them as well as for you. So you can basically do a lot of different things as a result of this unique thing with TikTok. And another really big thing that's an emerging thing with TikTok is that unlike really any of the other platforms, even more than YouTube and stuff like that, TikTok has really become a replacement of Google for a lot of younger users, like Gen Z, and they treat it more like a discovery platform as well as something like Google. So For example, here I included a screenshot of an article by the New York Times, where they basically say for Gen Z, TikTok is the new search engine. Need to find a restaurant or figure out how to do something. Young people are turning to TikTok to search for answers. Google has noticed. And here's just a few more examples. We got the New York Times, Adweek, Mashable, Yahoo, Business Insider. So the point being here is that, you know, people really do go to TikTok to discover and learn. And that's really good for you, because it means that if you figure out how to, you know, really crack the code on TikTok and how to use its discoverability features, you could use this as a really good way to engage with younger demographics and hopefully do that in a way in which you really don't have to be spending much money on like boosting your posts, which a lot of you may have had to do on TikTok, if sorry, on Instagram or something, if no one's actually seeing your content when you post it. So what do I mean by TikTok SEO? You may remember I mentioned this earlier on. So the fact that TikTok is being treated like a search engine then leads us onto this strategy of TikTok SEO. So if you don't know what SEO means, SEO basically means search engine optimization. You may have heard that phrase in relation to Google before, where people will want to basically optimize their website and their content so that it appears higher up in the search results on Google. So that's the process of search engine optimization, when you want to appear higher up in the search results. So what do I mean by that in the context of TikTok? Well, basically pretty much everything you see in this screenshot is what I mean by that. So anytime the TikTok is suggesting content or recommending content to a user, what we want to do is make sure that you're appearing up high up in those search results. So once someone searches anything related to your content, we want it so that your content shows up. And the way that we're going to do that is by really optimizing your TikTok SEO. And there's a few different ways that we're going to cover how to do that. Just bring it over. So the first way of doing that is using relevant hashtags and keyword-rich captions and content to teach the algorithm what categories your content fits into. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but basically the first thing we want to do to make sure you're appearing high up in those search terms relevant to you is to make sure that TikTok knows what you're about. And to do that, you want to basically make sure your captions aren't blank. You want to make sure that your captions have keywords and phrases that relate to the topic that you're trying to optimize your searches for. And so, for example, if you are related to, if you're a charity focused on like animal rights or something like that, you would want to include keyword-rich captions that include phrases related to that and topics related to that. And the reason why you want to do this is because if you can imagine, TikTok gets, you know, hundreds of thousands of videos uploaded every day, or potentially even every hour. They need a scalable way to be able to categorize the content and to know what content is worth suggesting to other users. And so how you can help the algorithm do that is by basically using these keywords, hashtags, and captions to indicate to the algorithm what category you fall into, to make it easier for the algorithm to then suggest you for those related search terms. And if you're unsure how many hashtags to use, I'd always recommend to, at least for TikTok, aim for around 5 at minimum, but really you want to be focusing on those keywords. And so there's 3 main places that you want to start optimizing your keywords and captions. So obviously the first part is going to be on your caption, and your caption is the bit of text that you can type when you're actually posting your main content piece. And that's where you can also put in your hashtags. The other part is on the automated closed captions that come as a result of the verbal things that are mentioned in the content. So this means mentioning as early on as possible, without it being weird for the content, certain keywords that relate to what you're trying to optimize for. And the reason for that is that TikTok's not only looking at the captions, but TikTok's also looking at the automated transcript of the video and pulling out keywords to better understand what that video is about, to then obviously suggest it to its users. And then following on from that as well, you can also really make sure you're optimizing your content piece by making sure that the on-screen text, and so that's the visual text that shows up that you type out that it's on the content piece itself, is also done while considering what keywords you want to optimize for. And so if you're unsure, you know, kind of where to start with this, and you don't really know what even you want to optimize for. There are some ways to kind of go about this. What you can do is go into TikTok, go into the search function, and then basically start typing in a few main base keywords related to what you're doing. So, for example, if we go with the example that I said before, which is the charity helping like animals in need or something like that, you could start typing in animal rights or things related to that, and then you basically see what starts coming up in the suggested section based off of the predictive text. So this is that bit over there. And then once you do this, you basically can start getting an idea of what sorts of phrases and keywords that you want to optimize for. And then once you do that, those are the things that you start including in your caption, your on-screen video text, and as early on in the verbal audio as possible. And yeah, once you start doing this, it's going to be a really good way to help with your TikTok SEO. There are also some other ways as well. The second other way is to just make sure you're posting regularly and posting within the same niche as well. One of the worst things that you can do is obviously you don't post regularly, but one of the worst things than that you can do is that you start posting about a bunch of different topics and a bunch of different niches, because then TikTok gets confused. They're like, well, hold on, like I thought you were mostly about this, so I'd categorize you like this to recommend your content to people that were interested in content like that. But now that you're posting about 10, 20 different pieces of topics, I, as the algorithm, am confused about what you're posting, and so I no longer feel comfortable suggesting you to other users, because I would do a better job of ensuring my users have a good user experience if I instead send them and show them a video of another creator that consistently creates that same type of content that always does well within that niche. So basically, the more you post regularly and the more you post within your niche, the more results you're going to see over a pretty short amount of time, because the algorithm can feel more confident in knowing that you're the type of creator that will give that end user the best type of experience. Another thing that you can do as well to help with your SEO is to use trending sounds and hashtags within those content pieces. And the reason why you want to do that is because that will basically be another factor that helps push you up higher up in the recommendations for when a user does search for something, because TikTok will always prefer to show content that's related to high performing trends, as it's likely the end user will have a better experience from this. Because remember, the goal of TikTok is good user experience. And so the more you can basically up your chances of it being seen as being possible to give a good user experience to the end user, the better. And the reason why trends and trending sounds and trending hashtags work with that is because those are already things that the algorithm sees as doing well. And so it is kind of a good way of helping your SEO in that sense. One of the other things you can do is start engaging with both your own audience members and other creators in that specific niche, because again, that helps with the categorization, but it also helps with your exposure. I actually know I have a few friends that run businesses from this specific tactic, where they'll basically offer a service where they'll just go out and comment on relevant other people's other creators' profiles, and it needs to always be value adding. If it's just what 1-2 word things or just like emojis here and there, TikTok will pick up on it, so they do need to be value adding. But yeah, the idea is that you also then get exposure to the users that are commenting on that other account's page. So for example, going again with the example of a charity that helps animals in needs, let's say you're that charity, you find a bunch of influencers or organizations that post about relevant topics. It could even be like cute dogs pages, or it could be a bit more specifically related to helping animals in need. And there's often conversations happening in the comment threads that you can join in a value-adding way, and not just a way of joining for the sake of joining. And once you start doing that and you become an active member of the community, you definitely will start getting just like more traffic come to you as a result of those people seeing you in the comment section. But more than that, you're indicating to the algorithm that, hey, you're part of this crowd and you're part of this community, and then that ups the chances of you also being exposed to the people that commented on that account to begin with. So it's just helpful in a lot of different ways. So I'd really recommend doing that. If you have the time, definitely do that, as it just ups your relevancy, and that will help show you higher up in the searches. The next thing that you can do is just optimizing your profile. This one's a little basic, but a lot of people don't do it, so I want to include it. And that's basically making sure that in your bio, it's not just a really short or blank bio. You want to do the same thing with trying to get as many relevant keywords and phrases in there without making it just seem like it was written only for that purpose. You want to do it in a succinct way that still talks to the algorithm. And same thing with like having a link in the bio as well. That's really clean and easy to read. These are all things that TikTok does look at, but it looks at it in that really scalable way. But yeah, so make sure you've got that optimized bio. And that will help you as well. And the next thing is using eye-catching thumbnails. And so this is basically when someone does do the search and they're kind of like scrolling through the first few options, you want to make sure that the thumbnail that you're using and the preview image of the post is eye-catching enough to actually get that person's attention. And if you're unsure about how to do that, what I'd recommend is getting inspiration from ones that are already ranking high. So, doing what we said before, which is basically going through these suggestions, looking at what's already performing well, and then basing your own thumbnails off of that, so you have some sort of a starting point for that as well. So yeah, if you follow all of these tips, it's going to really help you to rank highly on TikTok, and then that as a result is going to help you to both in the short term and long term get new eyeballs and new traffic. And then of course, using a good content strategy, you can then start converting that traffic into actual donations in your fundraising campaigns, pushing people to your link in the bio, stuff like that. So next we're going to go over trends, but I'm just going to take a little drink. And Susie is helping us, influencer Susie on the right. And so trends obviously are really big on TikTok. I think a lot of people know this, but they're not super sure about how to use trends. And so there are two types of trends on TikTok, largely speaking. There's content trends and sound trends. Content trends are the trends that usually have people doing an activity, or it's a specific content style, maybe a specific style of filming, for example, or a specific hashtag. So this can be like dances or things like that. And then the other side of it is sound trends. And so these are sounds that go viral, and these are the sounds that can kind of be overlaid to a variety of content types. And this usually can be something like a clip from an audio clip from a movie, from a game, or from a song usually. And so yeah, those are the main types of trends on TikTok. And so in terms of why you want to do this, I touched on it earlier about how TikTok wants to make sure the user's having a good user experience. And so if there's the category type, in this case the category would be that the trend, then it will look to give more reach to content that uses that, as the likelihood of a user having a good experience is higher because it's so proven that other users have enjoyed it. So for example, this is why you see a lot of viral content pieces of the same type suddenly get traction. Like right now I've got Hezbollah all over my feeds, and this is kind of why. And so incorporating popular trends can increase your visibility and increase the chances of you being discovered by a wider audience as a result. And it also helps to show you higher up as well in the recommendations, coming back to the SEO point. So if you do want to take the strategy, the thing that most people struggle with is that most people don't know how to sustainably stay up to date with this stuff. And you can definitely have a good start going into it, and then you get burnt out because you're like, there's so many trends, like how can I possibly keep up with it? And it just becomes a bit frustrating from that perspective. So what I'd recommend is to set up a separate account for just you and your team, and don't make this a public facing account. And then just follow a bunch of top creators, follow other organizations, other charities, influencers, follow all the creators, follow all the hashtags relevant to you, and basically just use this side account just to study. Like, this should just be a learning account. And to do this, you should act like a user and just like the stuff that you would actually like. Like the stuff that you would actually like, and engage with the stuff that you engage with, and then you'll basically get really entrenched into what the zeitgeist of that specific community is, and it will help you really easily find more trends that you can basically hop onto that are relevant to you. So for an example, again, a pet charity could do that by following UK-based, or really anywhere, dog influencers, like popular trainers, pet video pages, pet related hashtags, and also just following like other pet brands and pet charities just to get inspiration from them. So yeah, if you do this, it'll become really easy just to kind of stay on top of the game when it comes to knowing what trends to hop onto for TikTok, and it should hopefully make it a lot easier and a lot more manageable. And so next we're going to go into some tips for growing your following across different socials. And if it's just you on the marketing team, which it might be the case for quite a lot of you, don't get too overwhelmed by all of this when starting out. I would recommend just choosing one or two tactics and just deciding to, really go hard on that for a few weeks and seeing what works for you. Or if you can, ask your volunteers or your supporters for help as well, because, there are quite a few things here. But yeah, just to kind of go into it, some starting tips would be that if you have little to no following, what you should do is focus on content that the algorithms give more reach to. So we already covered the fact that unlike every other platform, TikTok is the algorithm, has the algorithm that actually will give you the free eyeballs. And on other platforms, yeah, it's really just not done. But the ones that the platforms where you do get some free reach, if you use specific types of content, are IG and Facebook if you use the new Reels function. But again, it won't be as much as TikTok, but it's worth doing. And then you also have YouTube Shorts. That will give you some new reach as well, if you have no following. And long term, you can do the long form pieces as well. You just really need to make sure that they're optimized SEO wise as well, and that on YouTube comes as a result mostly from things like keywords in your link in your video description and your title and things like that. And really for YouTube long form video, it's more reliant on having a really good thumbnail from being in the suggested section. And we'll have a webinar in the future dedicated to YouTube. So if you do want that, just message that in the chat, and that way our team knows that that's something you guys really want and we'll prioritize it. So yeah, there are some really important points about if you're starting out, what content types you should look to post. You shouldn't be doing feed posts if you have a really small following and you're looking to grow as a result of those posts, just as for example. The next thing is deciding what content strategies to test. You should consider things like what emotions to use in your marketing. I see too many charities just going for the sad approach. This is something that, is an approach that's been done, honestly, like since the 90s, and a lot of people have become desensitized to it. I would highly recommend that you start trying out and testing out different emotions in your marketing. A lot of studies have shown that emotions like positive and nostalgic emotions can be way more effective at driving actual donations than, including more like sad and negative emotions. So yeah, think about what emotions you can use to test in your marketing when it comes to your social media strategy, and actually have a testing framework set up where you can see that when we did this type of post, it had this type of result. A really good example is Charity Water. Honestly, what I'd recommend is visiting Charity Water's website just so that you get hit with the ads, so that you could kind of see like how a different approach of using more like happy marketing that also addresses like some of the issues that people have with donating to charities, like head on, how that can make a difference. So yeah, just definitely test out different approaches in terms of emotion, and then also in terms of themes and formats. So for example, one thing that you can do is just sharing stories about how the beneficiaries of your work were helped. And that's a really easy way to basically share some good news and try out the positive emotions. Some other content pieces, if you're kind of unsure about what to do, could be basically including interviews with different experts related to your cause, or volunteers and staff that you have in your team as well. And yeah, you can also go down the route of human-based content. So skit-based content or like public interviews work really well. And the thing is, if you do those types of content as well, it becomes really easy to get some more free distribution as well, because you can basically, hit up a meme page and be like, hey, you can post this for free. And I've done that a lot, especially when I was managing influencers and stuff like that. The reason how we'll get massive growth is that we'd basically just go to pages and we'll be like, we've got this bit of content that is pretty funny and your following probably like it. You don't need to pay us, just post it for free and tag us. And so if you do go down that human-based content route, you can basically take that sort of a strategy, and that can be stuff like public interviews as well. You can also test out educational content, and that can be things like infographics and carousels, or in short video form as well, which would obviously be great for TikTok. And you can also share news related to your cause. And the good thing with that is that you can usually integrate it with different trends and hot topics. And the news also is really good because it's also usually things that are more likely to get engaged with by people, because the other stuff that I mentioned is usually more evergreen stuff, but the sharing news related to the content is usually things that are interesting enough to get people to actually comment or share with their friends. And a lot of the sharing doesn't always happen in a public way, meaning it won't be someone tagging someone, it will be like a direct share via DM. So just always make sure you're looking at the post statistics to see how it's actually getting shared, to then decide like what type of themes and formats are actually working for you. And yeah, one of the other things you can do is basically identify and use your low-hanging fruit. I see this as a really big missed opportunity for a lot of charities as well. And so, for example, the first thing you can do related to this is look at your network and what marketing opportunities come from that. So that's looking at your trustees, your volunteers, your donors, and your staff, and basically crafting your social media strategy with that in mind. So, for example, maybe you want to create some shareable posts specific to your volunteer audience. Or maybe you want to do something like you want to interview your trustees, and then you want to do that interview as a video, and then you upload that on LinkedIn, and then you can tag them. And then the reason why you want to do that is because LinkedIn's algorithm is really unique in that when you tag someone, it automatically will just expose you and your post to that person's network. So let's say, for example, you have a bunch of volunteers, you want to feature your volunteers, so you do a video interview with them, you upload that on LinkedIn, you tag that volunteer, automatically then all of those volunteers network connections on LinkedIn will then see your post. So you automatically get exposure to all of that volunteers network, which should hopefully mean you get more volunteers as a result. You definitely will get more exposure and traffic, and hopefully you can tap into a new audience, basically, of potential donors as a result too. So for that one, I actually do really recommend using LinkedIn, because LinkedIn has some really special network effects that you can make use of. So I think that'll be really good to do that actually with the volunteers. Another low-hanging fruit that might be available to you when you're starting out is basically just skill sets. Just asking your network of supporters for things like help on editing, filming, or just social media help. A lot of the time volunteers that help like on physical things might be down to help with virtual things, with things like this as well. So it is just worth asking, especially just because there are a lot of things that you can be doing. And then the next little point on that was low-hanging fruit in terms of existing opportunities. So you might not know it, but sharing behind the scenes of like your work from the office that you're doing, or from the frontline teams and things like that, they're really, really powerful content pieces, and they're content pieces that exist every day. They're usually the ones that won't get high engagement, but they are the ones that will occasionally, more often than not, convince people to actually donate, because they see the real people and the real teams behind the charity making a sincere effort. Those have been the times that I've donated as well, because, sure, you can post a bunch of really interesting content, but I want to see you actually making the impact. And so I actually want to see that my donated money is going to good use, and sharing this stuff can be a really, really great way of doing that. In addition to socials on your email and on your website, blog, and stuff like that as well. So yeah, highly recommend doing this just in case it was overlooked. And if you're starting out. And yeah, I also want to include this little example of a charity using positive emotions and how really well that did. So this charity basically made this post, and it featured one of their team members, and how that team member was helped with their service when she was younger. And then also how she then came back to help with others. And it got really, really high levels of engagement. This was one of the highest performing posts for that charity. And it just, in my opinion, it is really, really good example of just trying out different formats of posting, and really trying out different emotions of posting, which I think is a really, really important thing. And then a few more quick tips. This is spanning basically all the different socials. So if you can, and if you have the time and resources, I would definitely recommend looking for opportunities to engage in conversations that are already happening online. On Twitter, you can do this through Twitter's advanced search function. So on Twitter desktop, not on Twitter mobile, you go into the search bar, and then it will basically give you options to do an advanced search where you can do things like, say you want to only search for tweets that were posted within a certain time frame that had certain keywords and phrases that were posted by accounts that had a certain amount of following, a lot of stuff. And basically it's a really good way to be able to find conversations that are already happening online that you can join. So for example, let's say you're a charity focused on mental health. Let's say he wanted to look at people that are currently online talking about borderline personality disorder, so BPD. What you can do is use the advanced search to do exactly that. And then basically what you want to do is find opportunities to add to the conversation in a meaningful way. And so with this case of the charity being a mental health charity, you could start sharing resources or using your unique knowledge to start adding value to these conversations. To a similar extent, but not as much, you can do it on Instagram as well, using hashtags, geotags, and product tags to find people that are relevant to what you're doing. So how I've seen this be done in some good ways is that, for example, product tags, you can maybe identify some brands that are within the same sort of sphere of what you're doing. So for example, this might be going back to the pet charity example, this might be a pet food brand that is very ethical, and so maybe you look at people that is tagging their brands, and those are potentially new people that you can go out and engage with. Or maybe you're a vegan charity and you want to look through geotags of people at like a vegan festival, which I think there's a big one in the UK, or of course hashtags related to you as well. So Instagram does have its uses for this. I would really recommend Twitter for sure. And one that I didn't include on here as well is Reddit. Reddit is a bit harder of a beast to tame. So I wasn't too sure actually if you guys would be interested in that for another webinar too. So definitely just leave a comment if you are about Reddit marketing, and we can cover that at a later point too. Coming back to TikTok, you can also do the same thing in terms of jumping in conversations already happening. TikTok has really, really active comment sections. And so it's a really good opportunity to just kind of like jump in and start replying to those conversations in a meaningful way as well. And again, if you don't have time to do this, you could use volunteers or interns to kind of help you with some of this as well, because this is one of the tactics that does soak up a lot of time, but can really, really help you and pay dividends. Again, I know many different businesses that actually offer this as a service, so it does really make an impact. One of the other things that you can do is create and use engagement groups. So we already covered about how the algorithm goes about making decisions about whose content to give more reach and to go viral, and so it does that by looking at those ratios of how many people watch the content and how many people end up sharing and engaging with it. And so that's basically where engagement groups come in, because they help to indicate to the algorithm that it's a good post, because it positively affects the post statistics in your favor. And so in terms of who you want in these engagement groups, I would recommend basically looking for mission aligned and value aligned charities that are similar to you, community groups, brands, influencers, and different supporters and stakeholders, and just asking them, if they wanted to join an engagement support pod with you as well. And most of the time people will say yes, because it is definitely helpful. It was more impactful a few years ago. It was really, really big, but it still does make an impact. And if you do have the capacity for it, I do recommend doing it. And one of the other things is basically just using creative collaborations to drive traffic and new audiences from other parties. So what does that mean? Well, we've got a whole section set up for it. And so now we're going to go over how you can basically start setting up and using social media collabs. And to kick it off, I just wanted to go over some examples about what is a collab and how it could look for you, because again, that's a term that's just used a lot. So yeah, below are a few ideas for collabs that you could use and you could do in conjunction with other charities, other influencers, or other brands. So the first one that is the most common way I would say is giveaways. And we're going to have some examples on the next few slides, just that can hopefully give you some inspiration about some giveaways that you can do. But yeah, the main thing to kind of consider with all of this is that for charities, most of the time, the charities get brands to donate products and services as prizes. And the brands benefit from that because they get exposure to the people that enter the giveaways. It makes them look good as well, to be frank. So they get a lot of benefits from that. You can also involve other charities or other public groups, and that will also get you, more exposure to their audience as well. And there are a few platforms that make it really easy to host these, and we'll go over some of them too. Just going to grab some water. So yeah, giveaways is a really good and easy way to collab. Another way is collaborative live streams. This is something that I don't see enough people in the charity sector doing it, but there are some really good commercial brands that do it well. So for charities, I think this will be a really good format for interviews. So for example, on Instagram or really any of the platforms, you can do a live stream where you bring on a specialist or an influencer or another relevant organization, be it a charity or whatever, and you basically just have a chat and you go over different topics on live streams. This will be really good to do on Twitter Spaces or Instagram Co-Live is really impactful. With Instagram Co-Lives, it's especially good because when you bring in multiple people, it basically brings in all of their audiences and it starts stacking them on top of each other. So what a lot of influencers do, and it's a little bit of an industry secret, is that they will basically set up co-lives, and we did this for a lot of influencers and management for them, where we'd basically set up a roster where we'll be like, hey, at X PM, we're all gonna hop on and everyone's gonna come in and out of the room, and we're gonna start basically having it so that we have a few people come in, and when they come in, they bring their audiences, and everyone's audiences basically snowballs, and then it pushes you into Instagram's top live section, and it's basically a really easy way to get new reach. But yeah, for you guys, I'd really recommend trying it out, especially with a few different influencers and creators, maybe even with volunteers if you're kind of unsure about it and you want an easy way to go into it, and just have some good questions in mind and a format about how you want to do it. And it can definitely be repurposed as a podcast too, which is really, really helpful. And then that podcast can, live on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or to be honest, I'd recommend hosting that on YouTube as well. And if you SEO it well, that should hopefully get more views ongoing long term. And then obviously this can all drive back to donations based on what topics are covered. And hopefully at the end, you'll have a call to action about if people want to learn more about what you covered and things like that. Another way to collaborate is by co-creating content, either physically or virtually. And then as a result, you have, obviously assets that you can post on social as well. A really good example of a virtual event is one that the World Wildlife Fund did with, I think it might have been Airbnb, but definitely some different photographers and photography brands and other related organizations, where they basically had a virtual experience online. And that was called Wildlife Online, and the event featured things like talks from different peoples, some workshops like photo editing sessions, and this was all online, and it ended up raising over $50,000, which I think was pretty good for how quickly the campaign was set up, and is, in my opinion, a good testament to a creative way that you can bring in other parties to kind of like help you with your collaborations. And so now that you have a better idea about, what a collab might look like for you, we can basically start going into what steps you can practically take to start setting them up. And so, over the next few slides, we'll go through 3 steps that you can take to start setting up awesome collaborations for yourself. And B2B Susie is here helping us. So step 1 is identifying potential partners with the same values as you. So your aim is to reach more donors. And so what you should do is think about where those potential donors are. So what types of products or services are they using? What types of pages and influencers do they follow? What books do they read? What podcasts do they listen to? You really should kind of spend some time just kind of thinking about your different types of donors and where those different types of donors are online, or where they are physically as well, in terms of maybe they all go to, or not all, but maybe some of them go to certain types of clubs or certain types of organizations and meditation classes, etc., etc. So you really want to put your feet into the shoes of your different donors to help you find out where those potential donors could be. An example is there's a charity called Pets Therapy, and they could do a collaboration with a service called Borrow My Doggy, which is a for-profit brand where you can basically let people borrow your dog and they can take your dog for a walk. And it's a really good tie-in for a charity like Pets as Therapy, because obviously, this is very mission and value aligned in that way. Or for example, going with that pet example, if you're an animal rights or a pet related charity, you could reach out to different pet related brands and services. For a mental health charity, this could be local meditation groups or classes, or influencers that are within the mental health and wellness sector as well. There's also many existing online groups that you can use. So for example, locals.org is an app that's really, really active in London. So you could tap into their networks. I've seen a few charities do that. What else is there? There's Meetup. Meetup is still used, not as much by younger generations, but it is still used. And Facebook events and Facebook groups. And if it's relevant to you, you can also find ways to collaborate with, different relevant religious groups as well. But yeah, really creators and influencers should be a really big source of potential partnership opportunities for you. And if you're struggling to find them, we're going to cover some ways in a bit about different ways that you can find creators related to you. But yeah, the basic way is just searching for related hashtags and looking at who the top creators are and basically reaching out in that way. So once you've figured out what are the different sorts of organizations and parties that could be a good fit for you, the next step is to think on what collabs would be beneficial for them. So why would they want to work with you? And so the best way to do this is kind of evaluate your assets and consider what value that you bring to the table for different partners. So one important thing to consider here is that, the different partners care about different things. And so you really need to understand each partner's different goals. So a charity has different goals to an influencer who has different goals to brands. And so what you want to do is first, ideally make a list of all of your assets. And so your asset could be your email list. It could be your followers, your website visitors, your volunteers. And it also could just be the fact that you're a charity as well, and that a brand working with you gets good CSR points that can also then help them better convert people to buy their products. So your assets could look differently to a bunch of different parties, and a big part of it is that there is a kind of like a branding halo effect that comes as a result. Just because we're low on time, I'm going to go a little bit faster through the rest of them. But yeah, the other big thing to consider is how easy or how difficult it will be for the brand to join your campaign, and how easy you can make it for them. If it's just a case that they just need to donate products or give a few coupon codes to make it work, then great, that's really easy for them to do and they'll join in. The other thing to consider is how much of an impact your specific collab with them will make. If it's a really small collab, then it might be worth hitting up a small partner first. And then you also want to consider their size and their reach and where their most active channels are. Because, for example, they might have dead socials, but they might have a really, really engaged newsletter. So you really want to do your research on the different collabs partners as well. Just because we're short on time, I'm going to start speeding up as well. So forgive me for that. So the next step after you've done all of that is to basically start contacting the different parties. One of the main things that I'd suggest here is that don't overstress and overcomplicate it. If you have a loose idea, I would still recommend, as long as you can basically go to the partner and say, we specifically want to work with you for this specific reason, and these are some of the ways that it can help. Would you be down to bounce some ideas about it? Most likely they'll say yes, and they'll be interested in joining. You don't need to worry about having a really built out deck going into it, but as long as you can kind of give a good sense of it, that'll be good. And yeah, just consider, all the different things that different parties are specifically interested in and what they can benefit from. On this slide, we're basically giving you a few different examples of what a social media giveaway collab could look like. So for example, a homelessness charity could partner with an ethical clothing brand, and they could have it where it's something like a Instagram giveaway where you enter by just tagging a friend and liking, and then winners could get X amount of clothing for the ethical brand, whether that's clothing brand, food brand, whatever. And so yeah, this would be just a really easy way to partner with a brand. And then you could also have it where for every entry the brand donates something or something like that. But yeah, really you want to keep it simple. Ideally keep it to one platform. If you do want to move it to another platform, or you want to make it omni-platform, you can do that. But if it's your first one, I'd recommend just making it one platform. There's some more examples here which I do recommend checking out when we do send the slides over to you. If you do a giveaway with more than one platform, you can do that through a service called Gleam is one example. There's many like that out there. But basically what these services will do is that they'll make it so that you can host your giveaway and have people enter through doing different actions. So for example, one could be subscribing to your newsletter, one could be visiting your Twitter page, it could be reading an article about you, watching a video, or it could have built-in viral sharing mechanisms. So we did this for one of my first few campaigns that I launched at Gnarbox. And when we were starting out and we had no following, we basically got almost 100,000 emails in the span of 2 months from one giveaway, because we had partnered it with many different other brands. And we included in these viral sharing mechanics where basically if you invite another friend to enter the giveaway, you get something like 50 entries. So there are a lot of ways that you can kind of make these more dynamic and interesting. And if you do that, I do recommend checking out Gleam as an example. And this right now is just an example of what that page could look like if you did do that, and how it kind of like includes all the entry options at the bottom. And if you don't have time for setting up external collabs, here are just some quick examples about ways in which that you could have some really effective social media campaigns just by yourself. So for example, to do these, really what you'd want to do is focus on campaigns that encourage UGC. UGC is user generated content. So this is basically things like maybe you encourage your donors and supporters to take selfies with something. So I think it was Save the Children that did this, where they got people to share a photo wearing a Christmas jumper and tag Save the Children. And I think another charity did this with it was Oxfam, did this with asking people to share a selfie with them wearing a secondhand piece of clothing, tagging Oxfam and donating £5. And this ended up raising £1.3 million in donations. So, you don't have to worry about doing partner giveaways. Just if you are doing a giveaway yourself or a social media campaign yourself, just kind of give it some thought about how you can encourage that UGC behavior to get your current supporters to post, or a campaign focused on sharing. So you get entries by sharing assets, for example, sharing a post, or obviously encouraging physical action via social media as well. Quick few points on what not to do when starting out. Again, just going to go fast just for the sake of time. Don't focus on the feed posts, focus on the ones that get you more reach that we covered. Don't focus on perfection. Too many people just don't post and don't do partnered giveaways because they're too nervous and anxious about how it can go wrong. But something will go wrong, because it is how it is, but you learn out of that and you'll get better and better from that. And yeah, last part on that is not using ineffective link in bios. I've seen a lot of people have a link in bio that will include like 50 links. And to be honest, few people are going to spend the time to go through every single link to see what's important. So, just make sure you're keeping it up to date and relevant. So yeah, next we're going to go over what some tips are if you're unsure about what to post. So this can also be used to help you find new partners to collaborate with, and can also be used to help you find new collaborative partners, as well as ideas. So what you can do on Instagram, for example, is you can go to a page and you can find and shortlist a few different accounts, and then basically click on this icon, the one circled red, and it will show you accounts related to that page. And by doing this, you can basically really easily create a quick list of accounts that you can get inspiration and suggestions from, and that you can just keep tracking ongoing for that reason. And you can also do that on Twitter as well. On Twitter on desktop, if you go to an account, there'll be a section that says you might like, and you can click show more. And then from that, you'll basically see more and more organizations related to that page to kind of help you, give you some more ideas as well. There are a few other services as well that you can use. You can use these services that are listed here, which basically what they'll do is you can put in keywords and hashtags, and then it will recommend hashtags and keywords based on that you can then use to find other accounts, or that you can use in your own hashtags. So I included one example. For this one, I typed in animal rights and it gave me all of these hashtags back. For that, I used tagsfinder.com, but you can use these other ones as well. And yeah, in terms of what you need to do when looking out for these posts is you want to look for what captions work well, what editing and cuts work well, what content formats work well, and how those different accounts have been collaborating with others to kind of give you some ideas as well. And so yeah, you can basically go over a lot of things like that. And what you want to do is get into the habit of like seeing what is working for those other accounts as well as seeing what isn't working. And we are going to go a little bit over time. Apologies for that. But yeah, if you do need to leave, we will send you a recording afterwards, so don't worry about it. And you can still include your questions as well. And then, when we do send out this recording, we'll also include some of the answers to people's questions too. But we are nearing the end, so if you do have to hop off, it won't be too long till the end. So yeah, when you're looking at other people's posts, these are the things that you should look at, and just really get into that mindset of being analytical and looking at what's working and not working. Another thing you can do if you're unsure about what to post is use AI to give you ideas. You may have heard of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is free to use, and basically it is really useful for a few different reasons. I gave an example here where I said to it, give me some TikTok ideas for a charity that helps people overcome difficult times in their life with the help of pets. And hopefully you can read a bit of that. But yeah, it came up with some really good ideas. One was creating a series of short videos featuring heartwarming stories of people who have been helped by the charity's pet therapy program. And so that would probably do really well, given what we talked about positive emotions working really well. Another one was encouraging TikTok users to share their own stories of how pets have helped them through their tough times, which is some really good UGC, user-generated content ideas. And then it even says, this could include doing a specific dance with their pet or a specific movement with their pet. Honestly, I think that's a great idea and that would kill it. What's some other examples? Educational content, different fundraising event ideas. So yeah, I genuinely would really recommend asking AI for some ideas, specifically the ChatGPT AI. It is free to use and you can use it on that link there. So it's chat.openai.com/chat. And yeah, it will just be a really good source of ideas and inspiration if you're really struggling. And then you can also use free AI tools to make graphics as well. So all the pictures of Susie that you saw, apart from obviously the first one, they were all made with AI within minutes. Some tools that I'd recommend are Midjourney. For Midjourney, you would need to use an app called Discord. Midjourney is a little bit harder to get set up for that reason, but basically there's this app called Discord, and it plugs into this app called Midjourney. If you do struggle to set it up, there's some really good YouTube videos. If you just type in like, how do I set up Midjourney, they'll show you. There's another one as well. It's a little bit easier to set up, but it's just not as good. It's called DALL-E 2. So yeah, you can use that as well. That's linked at the bottom here. And so I just wanted to give an example as well of how it works. So how it works is that you give these AIs prompts, and these prompts can be written in just normal sentence form. So I wrote here a Samoyed on the moon playing with a robot child, ultra detailed and epic. And so I put this into Midjourney, which was the one that creates graphics, and it came back with this. And yeah, Samoyed on the moon playing with a robot child, and it's looks pretty detailed and looks pretty epic to me. So it was pretty good. So yeah, I'd really recommend using AI if you are, at a bit of a crossroads about not being sure about what to post and you don't really have anyone to go to for ideas. It is a genuinely good source. And yeah, we are now at the end. Sorry for going a little bit over time. Our future topics that we're thinking about covering, and obviously, if you have mentioned anything in the chat right now about anything that you really want to see in future webinars, we'll prioritize that. So if you haven't written it, please do write it in the chat if you do prefer anything else. But yeah, some of the future topics is going to be how you can get free press coverage for your efforts, how to use gaming live streams to raise money, and how to set up viral campaigns for your cause. We will be sending out a feedback survey. So in that feedback survey, you can include basically anything that you do want to see. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Sorry again for going so fast towards the end. We can basically open up to any questions now as well, and I'll hand over to Grace to kind of
Great.
take it forward.
Thank you so much, James. That was a really comprehensive guide to small things that charities can do to help boost their following and increase donations. So we have had a few questions in the chat and in the Q&A section. There are quite a few of you left here, so we're going to go ahead and ask those to James, and then if anyone else has got any further questions, please feel free to email James or email us at events@charitydigital.org.uk, and we'll be sure to get an answer to you. So heading to the Q&A section, First question, what would you say about the recent TikTok bans by governments due to app privacy and security issues? Does it have any cautionary learnings for us as charity fundraisers?
Yeah, good question. So I don't know if it has any cautionary learnings, but what I would say is that from what I've been seeing, most of the bans are related to government staff and like people in office and things like that. So it shouldn't affect us too much in terms of reaching like a broader set of people. What I would say though is that you just never know in the space of socials like what's going to happen next. Even like law aside, just like how an algorithm will change. So what I'd recommend is that right now, while we know what the landscape is and while we know what the opportunities are, to hop on them. Because, you know, while I have been talking about the great benefits of TikTok, literally tomorrow they could change their algorithm and just go back to being like another Instagram, something like that. So yeah, for now, I'll definitely keep on and hopping on, even though there's all of this like big confusion in the media, just because it is a really good opportunity and it would be a shame to kind of not hop on it out of fear about what might happen, and that stuff that might happen might not even end up happening in a way that affects us.
Great, thank you. Next question from Debbie. She asked, have you got any tips on how to set up a charity TikTok account?
Yeah. So yeah, pretty much the same as any other account, except the main thing that I'd say is make sure it's not a private account, because if it's a private account, you're not going to get any new eyeballs and new reach, because obviously it's a private account. And then yeah, just make sure you do those the basics really of making sure the bio is well keyworded, making sure your LinkedIn bio as well is there and is in a way that's comprehensible and not like overly filled. But yeah, I wouldn't stress out too much about like initial setups and stuff like that. I'd recommend just like really focusing on testing out different content pieces and yeah, just really just getting started is the first step. That's always the most daunting. But good news is as well is that you can always set up these test accounts. So I'd recommend doing that if you are nervous with the initial steps.
Great tips. Thanks, James. Next question. Lots of questions here about TikTok. So how often should you post on TikTok? Tilda says, we started a TikTok, was getting good views for the first few videos and then stopped posting regularly. Now all of our videos only get 100-ish views. Should they relaunch?
Yeah, so it's a really hard question to say how much should you post, because honestly the answer is they want you to put, they being the algorithm, wants you to post as often as possible. I've heard many people say, you know, 1 to 3 times a day, all of this, but obviously your teams might not be big enough to support that. So it's a really difficult question to answer. If you can, I mean, yeah, once or at least every other day. But as you said, if you stop posting and you go off of the schedule, it does kind of mess you up. So what I'd recommend is just setting a schedule. And even if you can post, for example, once every day, maybe don't do it if your schedule can't do it long term, just so that TikTok knows what to expect as well. But yeah, in terms of what you should do next, I don't think you should create a new account. Still post on that same account just because you've already got some following and engagement there. And basically what TikTok will do is, let's say Sally down the road engaged with you 2 weeks ago and you haven't posted since. When Sally's next on her phone and you've posted, the algorithm will say, well, I already know Sally engaged, and sure, this account hasn't posted in a while, but likelihood is that if I show Sally this content piece again, she'll engage. So you do have some good like historical relationships built in already, given that you did well previously. So I wouldn't necessarily restart it. I'd continue it based on that reason. But if you find that for some reason it's just still not going, again, you can always just create that side account, post videos on there and just see like, is it an actually a deep rooted issue with your account now, or is it a case of you just kind of like need to retrain the algorithm with a new schedule?
Great, thank you. So a lot of charities, as we know, deal with sensitive topics. So there's a couple of questions here about how you would make the most of TikTok when you're working in sort of more sensitive areas. So have you got any advice for that?
Yeah, so there are some hashtags and things that TikTok obviously doesn't want to push or promote and things like that. So what I'd recommend is basically the ones that you're concerned about, the keywords and terms like that. I'd make a list of those and do searches of those hashtags and just see if anything shows up. If nothing shows up, then you know it's a shadow banned and banned hashtag and something that you want to stray away from, in terms of if the question is about not using things that TikTok will harm you for. But then if it's a question of, well, how can you kind of get around that if it's important things that you want to cover, but the TikTok's, they just feel like you shouldn't cover it. For that, what I found is there's usually keywords and terms that the community itself uses to kind of like get away from that themselves. I can't remember any offhand, but I remember there was a few for things like BPD where people were slightly changing the main hashtags because the creators in that own niche were noticing that they were getting lower views and lower reach as a result of using those. So yeah, it's a bit hard to give a specific answer to that, but a good general framework of an answer would be to look at what you're concerned about, see if they are indeed banned, and then also looking at how the community itself is getting around those, because most of the time they will be coming up with their own slangs and abbreviations to kind of get around those. So hopefully that was helpful.
Great, thanks, James. Just double checking. So obviously we spoke a bit about collaborations and how to use those on social media to sort of increase your reach. How would you reduce scammers taking over any sort of giveaways, competitions that you run across social media?
Yeah, really good question. So it's really hard. So for example, if your giveaway is a giveaway where it's a comment and like and stuff like that, that's where it becomes slightly harder. You can ban and block certain accounts from engaging with your content, but it is a bit of a whack-a-mole situation. The best way of doing it, which I found, was through platforms like Gleam. That's gleam.io, because what they actually have on their back end is ways of detecting things like, here's the same IP address entering the giveaway too much, and then it will automatically for you just remove that person from the pool of people that can actually be randomly selected to win. So yeah, in answer to your question, it depends on the structure of your giveaway, if it's just on one platform or if it's on more. But yeah, if it's on that one, then unfortunately I'd recommend you just need someone there to kind of like ban people. But if it's really a big giveaway that it's going to take up a lot of your time and not just 1 week long sort of thing, and it's covering other socials, then I'd recommend going for a Gleam that has those built-in detection methods.
Great. And sort of along similar lines about the collaborations, do you have to have a certain number of followers to be attractive to get partners for collabs?
Not at all, because, for example, you may have 0 following, but you may have a really engaged email list. And that actually goes the same way for other brand partners or other partners in general as well, because, a brand might have, honestly, it might have 100,000 plus really engaged customers, but it might have no socials. So, and others are usually aware of that as well. So, if you are approaching someone and you've got no socials, you will have some sort of asset, whether that's your volunteers or even just the fact that working with you will make them look good. There will be some sort of value that you can bring to them, and it's not always the ones that are publicly visible. And it's worth bearing that in mind for the other party as well, because while that other party might have 150,000 followers, they might not be very engaged, and they might themselves be insecure about their value add, because they might see the email list you have as far more valuable, which in a lot of cases it could be.
Great, thanks for that, James. Another question from Debbie. She asks, how do you know which thumbnails are performing well? Where can we find this information?
Yeah, so I would say the best way of knowing that is to basically again, shortlist a lot of terms related to you. And if you're unsure about what those terms are, you can kind of, let me just go back to that section real quick. Yeah, so first part would be creating a shortlist of all the search terms related to you. And then once you do that, just searching those yourselves on TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is, the platform that you're trying to optimize the thumbnails for, and looking at what's already ranking highly to then help infer what your own strategy can be for the thumbnails. Because sure, you could go try everything under the sun, but it's just easier to learn from the people that are already doing better than you. So that's kind of how I'd recommend going about that.
Great tip, thank you. Natalie asks, what type of TikTok account is best to use, a business or a creator account?
Yeah, this is a really hotly debated topic for a lot of social media marketers. basically, I would say always go for the creator account, always go for the average person account versus the business account. The reason why is because in previous years, I had tested this quite a lot myself, where we would set up different Instagram business accounts, and we'll have a creator account for a client as well, and we would see the business account would always get less reach, and this was on Instagram that I'm talking about. And so yeah, we ended up using more and more creator accounts, because we also noticed, coming back to TikTok now, that with business accounts, when things did go well and things did go, occasionally viral and get lots of views and traction, it didn't always sustain, but with creator accounts it did. Now, there's no consensus across all marketers about if this is like necessarily a, not malicious, but a thing that TikTok does on purpose, because they know the business accounts can like pay to like boost and promote things. But yeah, I would always just recommend choosing a creator account, although there are some analytics that you get only through a business account. But yeah, I would still recommend a creator account, just for the sake of having as much high possibility of more reach as possible, versus getting the potential issues that come from having a business account wherein they want you to pay for getting more reach.
Really interesting. Thanks, James. Okay, I'm afraid this is going to have to be the final question. Like we mentioned earlier, if you do have any further questions you'd like answered, please do send us an email or go on the live chat section of our website. So Emma asks, we are thinking about setting up a TikTok for a decent setup and then regular monitoring. What do you recommend in terms of hours? They're a team of 5, 2 specifically working on digital.
Yeah, so yeah, it's really difficult to give an answer without knowing specifics there, because even within the team of 5, like, I want to know like how many of those people are like on email marketing, on all different sorts. So it's hard to get a sense of resources from that. Could you which question was that again? Sorry, I just want to make sure I can reread it.
It's by Emma. We're thinking of setting up a TikTok. Yeah. Or just average, how long do you think you should be spending to set up the account, and then also how often should you be checking in on the progress and optimizing and things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, it would definitely be daily checking in, because the reason why it's also hard as well is because like if you wanted to do everything possible to do good on TikTok, you'd also want to have like literally daily time to go in and engage with the community, reply to comments, engage with others, stuff like that. So that's why it gets a little bit difficult. But I recommend at least daily check-ins for everything, so that you're getting the engagement with the wider community as well. For the initial setups, that shouldn't take too long, but in terms of monitoring, that should be done daily as well, in my opinion, because you want to make sure that you can see like, what's actually getting the most traction, both for you and for other creators in your community as well, so that you can hop onto trends as quickly as possible too, because that's really, really important. But yeah, what we can do, Emma, is I can chat a bit more offline about this, and you can feel free to email me, and then I can give you a bit more specific answer, just because there's so many other variables to consider that I don't want to throw you off with a bit more of like a general answer on that one.
Great. Thank you so much, James, for the presentation and for answering all those questions. Like I said, that's all we've got time for today, I'm afraid. But if you've enjoyed today's session and you'd like to attend more, our next webinar will be taking place on the 13th of April, and it's all about organising your charity events, and that'll be led by our events manager, Lisa Rowland. So do be sure to check that out. Yes, thank you again, James, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today. Hopefully see you soon.